Hi, I'm Rhonda Orr, host of the BullyBuster podcast. This is a video preview of a longer podcast I recorded with author Kate Surala. She's co-author of a new book, Unleashed Today. Take a look, and if you want to hear more, just go to our website, bullybuster.us/Kate.
So how important is it to have a great identity based on values and principles?
Absolutely. And that's the first step that we start with. And it's we focus in our introduction on values and also what is your purpose? What do you really want to achieve in your career? And how do you want to grow? And how do you want to expand? And there are a lot of people don't know themselves. Let's say if you're in your 20s and you enter the workplace from university, which is completely different environment, people are struggling to even know what they want, where they really thrive, and what makes them tick, and what are the things that they are not very good at. But if you are not good at something, that does not mean that you will not succeed. It's about potentially compensating it by someone else's talent. And if you're building a team at work and you already kind of get into the management role, it's all about getting some other people in your team that are your weaknesses are their strengths. And values, it all comes back to the values as well, and just being honest with yourself and quite clear what really matters to you.
I always think, and I've said for 30 years in two of my nonprofits, in order to feel well enough about yourself, you do the things that you need to do first thing in the day, whatever that looks like. Taking a shower, doing your makeup. For me, is a process, because I actually meditate through that time too. And feeling so well enough about yourself, knowing who you are and learning who you are and knowing who you are and deciding who you are, the who, what, where, when, why, how. And every time you learn something, you fit that into a value, right? And
Yes.
And so what happens when someone decides, oh, my identity is now different? So
But I think, Rhonda, it changes. It changes throughout the time. It's life is a process, and we should embrace that the values will change throughout your professional but also personal life. And I mean, I'm still too young to comment on that, and haven't gone through the process myself. But for instance, having a family is also an important value that people should embrace. When now COVID-19, a lot of people are complaining about this, but I must say I very much embrace it, because it also shows how other things are important and what are the other things that you can enjoy, and how you can spend the time, not just constantly rushing back and forth to the office, but also thinking, is there other time that you can invest more into your family, or doing things completely different things, because that will make you more relaxed. So then when you come back to work, you're full of energy. Before I came to this podcast, I've been gardening, which is something that I've never even thought about. But, it's just so nice and relaxing, and it gives you the energy then to thrive at the later stage.
So that's something new for you that you developed during your time of COVID.
Indeed. I must say I'm kind of starting off, because there are multiple different hobbies that you can think about that will just kind of put your mind at ease. But something that Sarah and I have been really advocating for is to be really clear of your boundaries as well at work. If you are, for instance, asked to do something, last minute, and you don't really see, you would be sitting there until 3 a.m. Is this really necessary? Why don't you check with your advisor and your supervisor or anyone else who has provided you with this assignment? What is the scope? What do you need to do? And what are the consequences of your work, and what's going to happen with that? If it is just some kind of summary for them, which is not going to go to a formal committee, why would you kill yourself and be there until 3 a.m. and then basically be tired for the rest of the week? So comes back to the values as well, and just seeing you as a priority.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's how you do it, because your manner of language and dialoguing is so kind. And it is based on what I see in you is feeling well enough about yourself to forget yourself and focus on others, and thinking about how they are viewing what you are doing, and being able to convey that without including a judgment about, to the team about what you're doing. This makes no sense to me. Why are we doing this? This is stupid. And, I think because people don't identify themselves to begin with, they don't know how to push back and to do
Mm,
it in a system where they feel confident in their own self, so they can do that without feeling threatened, without feeling
indeed.
like, or without feeling like a people pleaser. I was the biggest people pleaser on the planet until maybe 10 years ago, because my place as a woman in the environment at my age was so much different.
Mm,
Not very many women, even in the cosmeceutical arena, you had way too many men involved in that. And it was a different show, so to speak. And you had to learn how to survive first. And so one of the
yeah.
way that women did that was to be a people pleaser and break their neck at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't tell you how many 100 hours a week I worked for different corporations, trying to get it just right, trying to move up, trying to get the acknowledgement. So
Mm.
what do you tell young women that they should do in order to learn that kind of dialogue?
I think it's all boiling down to communication and
Mhm.
just being very clear what you have been asked to do, and then asking yourself, why I'm even doing this, and what is your ultimate goal? Is that something that you're very much enjoying, that you're just living in the office and want to spend all your time there? Or do you want to have a balanced approach where you also see your friends, where you get the energy to any other activities that will make you happy, and then you come back more energized and more efficient to do things? So it's all about being not only honest with others and asking them what is required, but also being honest with yourself. And I think many of us are not honest with ourselves because we don't know ourselves, right? And
Right.
there are multiple ways on how to really get to know yourself, and finding those values. We have spoken about that, but also becoming more confident, because once you know yourself more and also acknowledge and accept your weaknesses, you will be more confident out there, and you put yourself out. And I occasionally joke about my OCD. I mean, it's absolutely fine, Sarah.
You and
Sarah,
I could connect.
indeed. And just if you make a mistake, and Sarah and I are very much focusing on that as a key learning point, then turn it around and see this as an opportunity to overcome that issue again. So it's all about being honest with others, but mainly being honest with yourself, and just being forgiving, and keep going, keep improving, and just let your potential out there. And if other people don't like it, that's their problem. And not everyone is going to like you, or anything else that you do. It's just impossible.
And from looking at it from a point of bullying, it seems that people that are bullying you can't do it as easily if you're happy. If you're happy, it's because you know who you are and you do set those
Indeed.
boundaries. And when you set those boundaries, then you know what's valuable. I mean, my 3 top personal values are forgiveness. I'm glad you brought that
Hmm.
up. Gratitude. That's always humbling to be a person of gratitude. Um, and integrity, to be who you say you are. I grew up in an era of facades. My family
Hmm.
was the perfect facade. There were 4 of us. So 3 sisters that I had, we moved around a lot. There was a lot of abuse, all different types. But on the outside to other people, we were perfect. We were, dressed well, we sat well, we did this well, we but no one knew what was going on inside. But when I learned how and who I was and why I was, and I was happy about that, then I could work so much better with people who are not. And going back to the queen bees, they're usually not really happy people because they're not confident.
Indeed, and I think also the very interesting research that we have read and studied in depth with Sarah was that 90% of that is perception. It's all in your head, and 10% is facts. So focusing on the facts and completely trying to extract those thoughts, negative ideas that are all just assumptions, then you come back to the facts and ask yourself, is this actually really happening, or is this something that I think is happening? And you're right, queen bees are usually very unhappy and not confident women most of the time, and they are just compensating. They are trying to shed the light on someone else rather than on themselves, because they're really insecure. And being, as you say, being happy and being on top of the game and not even worrying about their thoughts or their ideas will actually put them off, because they know that if you're not interacting with their negative thoughts or their negative comments, it will get quite boring for such an individual. So just kind of minding your own business, and again coming back to your own values, and is this even worth it for you, and is the fight worth fighting? Because you don't need to be even in that fight yourself. And I know it's easy to say, but it's all about just checking in. We speak about mentors, coaches, and sponsors. Getting someone to tell you from an external perspective and validating your facts will also help you kind of overcome the whole thing.
I'm so thankful for what you just said. That, I mean, it shows through you. You radiate that from your inside out, that's how you feel, that it's freeing to be confident. It makes you happy. It makes you progress in the way that you want to progress. Because as you say in your book, I wouldn't have spent 10 years, and I spent 30 in the corporate environment, but I was a single mom. I thought, oh, this is the only way I can make money. So I did a nonprofit, Stop Child Abuse, and produced theater to create funds and awareness for already existing child abuse organizations. When I had a baby I could put on my hip and carry around and do that, and I loved it. But making money at it, I didn't have the confidence that I could do that. So what do you say when people push back, but my job, it pays so much better, and I have a family, or even myself, I live in LA, I live in London, as you do. How am I going to afford that?
What do you even need there? I would always come back to the question and challenge them. What do you need the money for? Do you think that money will buy you happiness? I don't think so. Or would some other activities that are maybe non-profit, as you did, this really made you happy, Rhonda? And from even how you talk about it, this is something that makes you tick and you're passionate about. If you can ideally marry those two, your passion and your job, then you are in the ideal place. But it does not happen, because some people just don't even know at the beginning of their career what they're passionate about, because they don't know themselves. So it's all again coming back to the values and your purpose. And then if you're unhappy in your position or in the way how you're doing it, then try to go on holiday, take some time off, but then think about how you can change your approach, because your thinking and your approach can also change how other people behave. So that job might actually become very, very nice, or things will change, or you just leave the job and have a different one.
Well, I agree with that. And I found that when I was doing what I wanted to do, a lot of my perfectionism didn't even come out. My OCD didn't even present itself. I got to the point of training where, the The folders had to be just so. The pencils that said your corporation had to be right there in a certain position. I had other trainers that would say, does that matter? Do we have to spend 30 minutes organizing folders and pencils? You know? and and when I was doing what I wanted to do and I set boundaries, my confidence was just thriving, because people
Yeah.
accept your boundaries if you give it to them. They won't accept your boundaries, and they'll push on everything. I had people that used to, you had to be dressed a certain way, and people would come up and say, are your eyelashes real? And I would think, do I need to explain that to you? Or can we just go on? One person actually
Yeah.
pulled a label. I'm older than you, and my son is 30. But in those days, it was not uncommon for people to actually touch you. I was pregnant when I was working. People were constantly putting their hands all over me. And I excused it because I didn't set up a boundary of, that's not okay. That's not okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
You're absolutely right. And boundaries, that's especially in the working environment, that's everything. We highlight one very interesting example, which is being the coffee/tea lady that many of us might have been already asked and approached to do. And we even got a male contributor to our book, who is explaining on how he is changing the status quo by not asking who is the youngest or appointing a woman per se to serve the coffee, but he actually serves the coffee himself, even though he's the most senior in the room. So I don't think it's not necessarily only coming from these very young, ambitious women, and but just making a joke out of it and saying, oh yeah, why don't we all come and socialize next to the coffee machine, but also encouraging the other let's say more senior people, and usually these are men, to then basically support these women who might be put in that position. So let's say one of the main tips that Sarah and I put together was, of course, making fun, and whenever you're put in an awkward situation, just making a joke out of it, because that's going to make it even better. And then the other time is just being clear about the boundaries. If you're serving the coffee, you will miss the beginning of the meeting.
Exactly. You forget your opening, you forget everything. And you also accept something because you're a junior member that you shouldn't have to accept. And like you said, you did it so beautifully. And using humor and saying, come on, we can all learn. And of course, with your British accent, I think it's even better. But I think having that lightness, this is not a big deal who gets the coffee.
Yeah.
We can all do that. And I've seen so many more corporations going to that and even exhibiting that on their website. Here's who we are. We don't have cubicles, and we don't have windows with, your office and a door that shuts, because that was such a big deal in my era. In the 90s, it was, in the 2000s, it was like, oh my gosh, I've got the corner room. And, I lived in New York City. I lived in LA, and oh, aren't I just grand? But I
You know
hated
what,
it
Rhonda?
because that's not my
I think
personality.
everyone, yeah, and I think I used to dream when I started my career of the corner office and working for a really big law firm. And you know what? When I'm looking back at that, I don't think it will make me happy, because these were the stereotypes that people are there and they're working really hard all these hours. But it's not about the input, it's about the output. And currently working from the kitchen table, because I don't have a proper desk for almost a year. I'm the most happy person on earth, and I don't need a corner office or any of that, or some really, people also assign too much value to titles. It's all just a corporate game, and it all really boils down to what you can bring to the table. And Sarah and I hope that once you are your full true self, you really unleash your potential and you bring your full self to work. And if people like it, great. If they don't like it, also fine, and it's just you, it's your authentic yourself, and that's all about that.
Well, that's so true. And how do you feel it's working with Gen Z? if you have to use a label, coming up and getting out of college. Is that the reason? Is that the main reason that you decided to do this book, you and Sarah?
Yes, mainly. Let's say there were multiple obstacles that we were overcoming after graduating, and myself being Czech and having now living abroad for, it's going to be next month 10 years, and Sarah being German, also living abroad, I think also for 10 years or so. We met at university and we've always stayed in touch, and we were experiencing very similar issues in terms of there were a lot of stereotypes, there were some sexist comments, there will be assumptions made, like you would be serving the coffee as the youngest professional in the room. There will be comments made that all these different things that we have experienced. And we have just made the decision when Sarah visited me in London, and we were on holiday in August 2019, and we just said, you know what, we would never want anyone else to go through the same experience, and we really genuinely want to help the next generation of young ambitious women to unleash their potential straight away and imagine where they are going to take it. Because I just feel very much obliged to return back to the society. I've had immense support from my network, my mentor, my family, all of my friends, and it's just about, I want others to thrive straight away. And it was just something that really drove us, and we spent nights and days writing this book next to our full-time jobs. And our amazing team, who has no qualification, no background in anything like self-publishing a book, and look where we got it. And I'm really proud, and this is another thing that just signals and justifies the self, that, let's say, justifies it, that you don't hire people to tick boxes or satisfy some criteria. You just hire people on potential, and I'm a huge advocate for that.
I love what you just said, because when you have that kind of environment, you really and truly can have a team. And I looked up the word unleash, in the dictionary. And one word that I loved that it said was ignite. It also said freeing, and it said some other things that were wonderful about unleashing, all the connotations to that word. And in all the topics of your book, it shows that power and that igniting that it can do for someone. I mean, it's very exciting to think that you can say, oh, they've lived through this, now I can go through that. And I think to myself, instead of regret, I go, you know what, everything you learn, it makes you feel that you have more depth of character, you have more empathy. And
Yes.
those journeys, even while being helped with you, they're still going to learn lessons. I mean, if they're not, then they're really not going to have that igniting feeling or that freedom. Would you agree with that?
Indeed, absolutely. And failure and mistake, it's actually an amazing opportunity to just learn from, and take all that wisdom and apply it again in the next situation. And people are so afraid to fail, and
Oh,
just kind of put themselves out there. And you know what, if you don't put yourselves out there and you don't fail, you will never get to where you are. I mean, it's not all nice and sunshine and beautiful all the time. That's why we also have rainy days to appreciate the sunny ones. So
yeah.
that's why having the experience and failing, and Sarah and I are really, really paying a lot of attention to the lessons learned. That's why every single story has the lesson learned in it. That will help you succeed, and kind of accumulating and collecting all those stories. Hopefully by that, we will help other young ambitious women to unleash.
I value you, Kate, and what you and Sarah have done. And I
Thank you.
think it's astonishing. It's so timely in our culture. It will be a piece of truly transforming culture if the young women and men take this upon themselves to really grow. I mean, all of your chapters, Here I Am, the confidence muscle, which it is, and you have to use it. Otherwise, it just you get wishy-washy and you get lazy in
Yeah.
your mind, your critical thinking and all of those types of things. And then chapter 3, I'm a recovering perfectionist. There are too many women, especially, although there are men, but there are too many women who are your age and older that still have left over from people like your parents and your grandparents that lived through that. To be a woman in business, you have to be perfect. And I can remember being crushed so many times. So step 4, mastering the art of networking. That was something we haven't touched upon yet. And I just want to ask if there's something about that, because I am a people person. You know, I was a flight attendant for 7 years before I even got into the corporate world. And they said, stop. We want everybody to stop saying they love people and they love traveling. We hear it from everybody. And I went in and explained why I love traveling and why I love people. And that's what I have to say. And, you know, and so I was a flight attendant for those years. But a lot of people I knew that aren't that kind of personality. And, you know, they really, it's such an aversion to networking. So what is your one magical point of information or advice that you can give about networking that will make a difference in someone's life?
Put yourself out there, and it's a skill that you can learn. That's the most important bit, because people think that if you're an extrovert, it's much easier and introverts are not very good at networking. No, that's rubbish. It all really boils down to putting yourself out there. And again, coming back to the point that we covered, if you fail, what's the worst thing that people will think? They will not respond to your request on LinkedIn, or they would just say, oh, I need to go to the ladies' room or elsewhere. And you know what? Then they were not worth your time, and then you move on and speak to someone better.
If you'd like to get a hold of your own copy of Unleashed Today, just go to our website, bullybuster.us/Kate. That's where you'll find the full podcast interview as well. See you there.